glowing. She's high in the sky singing. Way above the clouds 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 in the sky singing. She got wings, she got a halo. It seems to me so unnatural. That's one thing that I just don't know. I seem to be so incredible. She looked at me, took me by surprise, yeah. As if she took me by the hand to some foreign land and had me way above the clouds in the sky singing. 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 Singing my song, from dusk till dawn, I know you got a lot on your mind, but it won't be long, so make it better, and I may be wrong, some never get to even cross the line before they make it on, singing my song, from dusk till dawn, I know you got a lot on your mind, but it won't be long, so make it better, and I may be wrong, some never get to even cross the line before they make it on. I'm looking at an angel, and believe me when I say she got that whole place glowing. She got that whole place glowing. She got that whole place glowing, 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 glowing. I'm looking at an angel, and believe me when I say she got that whole place glowing. She got that whole place glowing. She got that whole place glowing. She's high in the sky singing.
It's a new generation.
Mr. Worldwide.
Of party people.
Red one.
Let me introduce you to my party people in the club.
I'm loose, and everybody knows I get off the train. Baby, it's the truth. I'm like Inception. I play with your brain, so I don't sleep or snooze. I don't play no games, so don't get it confused, no. Cause you will lose, yeah. Now pump it up and back it up like a Tonka truck. Darling.
If you go hard, you gotta get on the floor. If you're a party freak, then step on the floor. If you're an animal, then tear up the floor. Break the sweat on the floor, yeah, we work on the floor. Don't stop, keep it moving, put your drinks up. Pick your body up and drop it on the floor. Let the rhythm change your world on the floor. You know we're running tonight on the floor.
Brazil, Morocco, London to Ibiza,
Straight to LA, New York, Vegas to Africa. Dance the night away, live your life and stay on the floor. Dance the night away, let somebody drink the night. we gon' be it on the floor. Tonight we gon' be it on the floor. I know you gotta clap your hands on the floor and keep on rocking, rock it up on the floor. If you're a criminal, kill it on the floor, steal it quick on the floor, on the floor. Don't stop, keep it moving, put your drinks up. It's getting ill, it's getting sick on the floor. We never quit, we never rest on the floor. If I ain't wrong, we probably die on the floor. Brazil, Morocco, London to Ibiza, straight to LA, New York, Vegas to Africa. Dance the night away, live your life and stay on the floor. Dance the night away, grab somebody, drink tonight we gon' get it on the floor. Tonight we gon' be it on the floor.
It's like a trunk full of bass on an old school Chevy, 7th grade Donkey Donk. All I need is some vodka, some Chunky Kong, and once a chick go get Donkey Kong. Baby, if you ready for things to get heavy, I get on the floor and act a fool if you let me lie. Don't believe me, just bet me. My name ain't Keith, but I see it while you sweat me. L.A., Miami, New York, say no more, get on the floor.
Tonight we gon' be it on the floor. Tonight we gon' be it on the floor. Tonight we gon' be it on the floor.
I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. Turn nights at night, let's live it up. I got my money, let's spend it up. Go out and smash it, like oh my God. Jump out that sofa, let's get on.
I know that we'll have a ball if we get down and go out and just lose it all. I feel stressed out, I wanna let it go. Let's go way out of space, I'm losing all control.
Fill up my cup, Mazel tov. Look at her dancing, just take it off. Let's paint the town, we'll shut it down. Let's burn the roof,
and then we'll do it again.
let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, and do it, and do it. Let's live it up and do it, and do it, and do it, do it, do it. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. 'Cause I got a feeling. that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel tonight's the night. Hey, let's live it up. Let's live it up. I got my money. Hey, let's spin it up. Let's spin it up. Go out and smash it. Like oh my god. Like oh my god. Jump out that sofa. Come on. Let's get up. Fill up my cup. Drink. Mazel tov. Look at her dance. Move it. Just take it. Let's paint the town. Paint the town. We'll shut it down. Shut it down. Let's burn the roof.
And then we'll do it again.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And do it. And do it. Let's live it up and do it. And do it. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, do it, do it, do it. Here we come, here we go. We gotta rock, 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 rock. Easy come, easy go. Now we on top, feel the shot, body rock, rockin' don't stop. Round and round, up and down, around the clock. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Do it. Get you know what we say, party every day, party every day, and I'm feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night, that tonight's gonna be a good night, that tonight's gonna be a good night, I'm feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. Yes, you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. Oh, too long. Oh, too long. Yeah, you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. Oh, too long. Oh, too long. Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. Oh, too long. Oh, too long. Yeah, you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. Oh, too long. Oh, too long. Spend the rest of my days spend the rest of my days here. Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven for too long, for too long. Yeah, you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven for too long, for too long. Oh yeah, ooh. Oh yeah, ooh.
Mic test. Testing, testing.
Dance, yes. Next, dance, yes. Shimmy, shimmy, y'all, shimmy, yam, shimmy, yay. I'm an old dirty dog all day. No way, Jose. You can only go one way. I mean, money. You should check that out. Maybe you ain't turn around. Maybe it's none of my business. But for now, work it out. Let's get this.
Nobody knows what I'm feeling inside. I find it so stupid, so what should I hide? That I love to make love to you, baby.
Make love to me.
So many ways wanna touch you tonight. I'm a big girl, got no secrets this time. Yeah, I love to.
Bayang magiliw sa silanganan. Testing. Mic. Mic test. Mic. Mic test.
Ganda siya. Yan, oh.
First note nga, first.
Sound check, sound check. Sound check. Ay. Ulit.
Bayang magiliw, pelas ang silanganan. Alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupa.
Okay naman siya. Tapos, tama di ba? Di tsaka dosya. Di, wala. Da. Di pala. Da.
Yupi naming mahal, pamantas ang hirang. Ang
Ano po? Ayun.
Ay, dulo ng pambansang awit.
Okay na po yun.
Okay na yan?
Ang ano naman natin is yung tapon ko. It's naman. Maganda yung sound nila.
Shimmy, shimmy, y'all, shimmy, yam, shimmy, yay. I'm an old dirty dog all day. No way, Jose. You can only go one way. way. Ay, mi madre, you should check that out. Maybe you ain't turn around. Maybe it's none of my business. But for now, work it out. Let's get this. Dale.
Nobody knows what I'm feeling inside. I find it so stupid, so why should I hide? That I love to make love to you, baby.
Make love to me.
So many ways wanna touch you tonight. I'm a big girl, got no secrets this time. Yeah, I love to make love to you, baby.
Make love to me.
The processional is led by the University Marshal, Assistant Professor Reynald Adrian Hugo. The graduating class of 2013 from the Faculty of Education, the Program Marshal for the Associate in Arts, Assistant Professor Juliet Aleta Villanueva. The Associate in Arts candidates. The Program Marshal for the Diploma in Language and Literacy Education and Master of Arts in Language and Literacy Education, Assistant Professor Susan Janet Ildama. The Diploma in Language and Literacy Education candidates. The Master of Arts in Language and Literacy Education candidates. The Program Marshal for the Diploma in Mathematics Teaching and Diploma in Science Teaching, and the Assistant to the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Assistant Professor Aurora V. Lacaste. The Diploma in Mathematics Teaching candidates. The Program Marshal for the Diploma in Social Studies Education, Assistant Professor Roel P. Cantada. The Diploma in Social Studies Education candidates. The Program Marshal for the Graduate Certificate in Distance Education and Master of Distance Education, Assistant Professor Lonely M. Ireland. The Graduate Certificate in Distance Education candidate. The Master of Distance Education candidate. From the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, the Program Marshal for the Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies, Mr. Diego Silang S. Marana. The Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies candidates. The Program Marshal for the Diploma in Computer Science, Assistant Professor Al Francis D. Librero. The Diploma in Computer Science candidates. The Program Marshal for the Master of Development Communication, Dr. Benjamina Paula G. Flo. The Master of Development Communication candidates. The Program Marshal for the Master of Information Systems, Assistant Professor Concepcion L. Khan. The Master of Information System candidates. From the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, the Program Marshal for the Diploma in Research and Development Management and the Director of the Information Office, Dr. Primo G. Garcia. The Diploma in Research and Development Management candidates. The Program Marshal for the Diploma in Environment and Natural Resources Management and Master of Environment and Natural Resources Management, and the Assistant to the Vice Chancellor for Administration, Dr. Consuelo D. L. Abido. The Diploma in Environment and Natural Resources Management candidates. The Master of Environment and Natural Resources Management candidates. the Program Marshal for the Master of Public Health and the Director of the Office of Academic Support and Instructional Services, Dr. Sheila R. Bonito. The Master of Public Health candidates. The Program Marshal for the Master of Public Management, Assistant Professor Julie Lizette M. Pervasi. The Master of Public Management candidates. From the Faculty of Education, the Program Marshal for the Doctor of Philosophy in Education, Dr. Rachel C. Soto. The Doctor of Philosophy in Education candidates. The Faculty Marshal, Assistant Professor Bria May H. Borromeo. The faculty members of the UP Open University. Former UPOU officials, Dr. Priscillina P. Legasto, former Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Faculty of Science and Technology, former Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Nema N. Hermosa. The Executive Committee Marshal, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, Dr. Jean A. Saludades. The UPOU Executive Committee members, Faculty of Information and Communication Studies Member at Large, Dr. Arminda V. Santiago. The officials of the University of the Philippines Open University, the Dean of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, Dr. Inocencio E. Puot, Jr. The Dean of the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, Dr. Belinda D. P. Andalaria. The Dean of the Faculty of Education, Dr. Patricia B. Arito. The Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Melinda F. Lumanta. Deans of Constituent University, the Dean of the School of Health Sciences, UP Manila, Dr. Salvador Isidro B. Destura. Vice Chancellors of Constituent Universities, the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, UP Diliman, Dr. Ronald S. Banzol. The Vice Chancellor for Community Affairs of UP Los Baños, Dr. Enrique L. Tolentino, Jr. The University of the Philippines Assistant Officials, the Assistant Vice President for Public Affairs and Director of the Office of Alumni Relations, Dr. Jose Wendell P. Capuli, the Assistant Vice President for Administration, Professor Nestor O. Ranieses, the Vice President for Public Affairs, Dr. J. Prospero P. De Vera III, the Vice President for Planning and Finance, Dr. Lisa Grace S. Gonzalez, The Secretary of the University of the Board of Regents, Dr. Lillian A. de las Llagas. The members of the UP Board of Regents, the President, UP Alumni Association, the Honorable Ponciano E. Rivera Jr., carrying the UPOU mace, the University Registrar, Dr. Ricardo T. Bagarinao, and the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Open University, Dr. Grace Javier Alfonso. The commencement speaker, Dr. Cynthia Rose B. Bautista, Commissioner, Commission on Higher Education. Please stand by for the entry of colors and the singing of the national anthem.
Walang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, luyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisingil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa sinulan, sa langit mong bagaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isa't ang watawat mo'y tagumpay na naniningil. Ang bituin at araw niyang kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng mahal at ipagsinta. Buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya ng pag may mag-aapit. Ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Chancellor Grace Javier Alfonso, buong karangalan kong inihaharap sa inyo ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa 3 kolehiyo ng University of the Philippines Open University sa taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Ang kanilang pagtatapos ay inirekomenda ng kaguruan at ng University Council of UP Open University at pinagtibay ng lupon ng mga rehente.
Ayon sa batas ng Republika ng Pilipinas at sa kapangyarihan ipinagkaloob sa akin ng lupon ng mga rehente, ibinibigay ko sa inyo ang mga titulong inirekomenda para sa inyo. Kalakip ang lahat ng karapatan, karangalan, at pribilehyo, pati na ang mga responsibilidad na kasama nito.
Si Dr. Maria Cynthia Rose Banson Bautista ay kasalukuyang Commissioner ng Commission on Higher Education or CHED at Professor 12 sa Universidad ng Pilipinas sa Diliman. Isa siya sa mga kilalang social scientist sa bansa, lalo na sa mga isyung pansakahan, mga alternatibong paraan ng pag-unlad, kalamidad na pangkalikasan, reforma sa edukasyon, urbanisasyon, trabahong pandaigdigan, at mga krisis pangkabuhayan. Bukod dito, siya ay nagsilbing dekana ng UP College of Social Sciences and Philosophy at Executive Director ng Center for Integrative and Development Studies ng UP System. Naging board member din siya ng Asian Research Institute ng National University of Singapore, Philippine Institute of Development Studies, Human Development Network, Philippine Social Science Council, Pulse Asia Incorporated, Social Weather Station Incorporated, UP Press, International Fellowship Program, at ng Asian Scholarship Foundation. Kasalukuyan din siyang pinuno ng Social Sciences and Humanities Committee ng UNESCO National Commission at ng Board of Trustees ng Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation. Maliban sa pagiging commissioner ng CHED, siya rin ang pinuno ng Task Force on Quality Assurance nito. Marami nang natanggap na pagkilala at gantimpala si Commissioner Bautista. Kabilang dito ang Achievement Award for Social Sciences ng National Research Council of the Philippines, Professional Achievement Award ng UP Alumni Association, at isa sa mga 10 outstanding women in the nation's service or towns noong 1995. Siya rin ay ginawaran ng National Academy of Science and Technology ng Outstanding Young Scientist Award at Outstanding Publication Award. Kinararangal kong ipakilala ang ating panauhing pangdangal, si Commissioner Maria Cynthia Rose Banson Bautista.
Maraming salamat po. Magsiupo po tayo. Distinguished members of the UP Board of Regents, Chancellor, UPOU Chancellor Grace Javier Alfonso, the Vice President and Secretary of the UP System, the officials, the Vice Chancellors and Deans of UP Manila, UP Los Baños, and UP Diliman, the officials of UP Open University, colleagues in the dynamic and upbeat faculty of the UP Open University, parents and loved ones of our students who have waited patiently for this day, and most of all, the graduating class of 2013. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. It is my singular honor to address you on this auspicious one. As a general rule, I have refrained from accepting invitations to speak in graduation ceremonies because I am not confident I can inspire a generation who grew up with inputs from technological devices, or even an older generation that grew up with technology in OpenU. I finished college more than 4 decades ago, when my daughters were still in college, and I would ask their feedback on the welcome remarks I made for the annual recognition rites of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy in Diliman. They would dismiss the message as too serious and thus irrelevant for the graduates I was welcoming, whose brains were wired differently. They found my drafts corny, although that word was never in their vocabulary. Its equivalent was whatever, ma, complete with rolling eyes which signaled a thumbs down. But when Chancellor Gigi invited me to address you today, there was no hint of my usual reluctance. I agreed without hesitation, despite the even more technology-exposed students of OpenU. For I must admit a very soft spot for the UP Open University, a resonance with its mission that, while intuitive, stands on subjective and objective platforms. Why the soft spot? From a not-so-far distance, I witnessed the conception of UP Open University and attended meetings where its staunchest advocates justified its establishment as a way of strategically moving the frontiers of UP into the future. I saw it born. I stood by the nursery to watch the baby make its first cry, in the midst of its older siblings in the UP family. I heard them remark that the new baby might just possibly water down the high UP standards of academic excellence. Many years later, I had the privilege of joining the UP Open University strategic planning and to see for myself how terribly wrong its older siblings were. For I met an amazing breed of highly competent young faculty who did not only possess more than the requisite quality of mind, but more importantly, the openness, commitment, and enthusiasm to keep up with new generations of technology, new learning paradigms, and developments in the sciences that underlie them. Interestingly, that single experience with colleagues in the UP Open University community was an aha moment for me. I began to understand how the OpenU signified UP's formal adoption of a lifelong learning paradigm, even if not all of our colleagues in the entire UP family are aware of it. The shift in international discourse from education to learning, from education as transmission of knowledge from experts to students, usually in structured educational settings, to learning as the process by which learners interact with their environment and technology, in your case, construct their world and acquire skills and competencies that they need to function in a changing world. That's both profound and pragmatic. That shift is profound and pragmatic. In a sense, it reflects the rapid changes in the world that is captured by a parallel shift in political economic discourse from development, characterized by the catchphrase, catch up with the West through the integrated development of agriculture, industry, and services, to globalization with its new slogan, find your niche in a borderless world. In this globalized world of rapid technological advances, the role of education is to enhance the competencies of individuals to learn continuously throughout life through the many alternative modes of delivery that are increasingly made available to them. As we move further into the 21st century, our learners will be coming in and out of the formal structures of education and obtaining various certifications that may be achieved through both formal and non-formal learning. Of all the UP constituent units, it seems to me that UPOU is the one with half of its body into the future. It will unarguably move fastest in adapting to the changing landscape of higher education. Why do I say this? I was in Dubai a month ago for the British Council's Global Congress on Higher Education. In that Congress, many of the sessions were devoted to the discussion of what was referred to as, in quotes, the most disruptive, but certainly the most exciting recent development in higher education. The massive open online courses, or MOOCs, which I suppose many of you know. You may be familiar with some of its platforms. Coursera is one of them. Thanks to the internet, the MOOC movement, or the MOOCs movement, has now made available to avid learners the chance to register and take courses complete with sample exams, from science to engineering, from 6-week courses on writing, photography, or whatever hobby, to learning computer programs, even to taking graduate courses. You can have this for free, unless you want a grade for which you will have to pay. These courses were developed by the Ivy League schools and other reputable institutions in the US, and now they have one in the United Kingdom. If you don't need a grade, you can just take these preparatory courses for certification if you're not in school. With the further development of MOOCs, avid learners can take courses. A good friend and investigative journalist, Sheila Coronel, who was recruited by Columbia University to be the founding director of its investigative journalism. Accordingly, reputable U.S. universities finally realized the promise and potential of online education in a globalized world after looking down on online. Several months later, a colleague from the UP School of Economics, in UC Berkeley for his sabbatical leave, emailed me about the experience of his daughter, who enrolled in a course in Toronto that she needed for her curriculum in a California university. He drew the profound implications of MOOCs for higher education. I was working for a while in the Commission on Higher Education. I subsequently enrolled in a short course on writing, which she still engages her up to this day. At the same time, I bumped into Chancellor Gigi Alfonso, who excited me with her own discussion of developments in online education in Asia, and we are in online education, especially in the ASEAN, and of our plan to develop MOOCs like this that UP can more aggressively offer online. My dear graduates, against this backdrop, my first message this afternoon is the frontiers of the UP system more faster into the future. I will now go to my more important message. Let me explain that the valuable lessons my life journey taught me are worth it for the younger generation, and for the older ones whose experiences may be very different from mine. The young ones among you belong to a very different world from those of us who are older. Yours is a world that is changing more rapidly than ours ever did. For your generation, the world, in its concrete and virtual manifestations and realities, is literally at your doorstep. To the young ones, those of us who are older have witnessed the evolution of technology from our youth into your time. For instance, from my research assistant days in college and later my research and teaching assistant days in graduate school, I moved from counting every response on a variable to what they call Q sorting for simple statistical cross-tabulations. Q sorting entails punching cards, you just had cards, for putting in a crochet needle so that the cards that do not belong to a particular category will fall and be counted and entered into a cell in a table. Let us say you are cross-tabulating sex and whether, let us say you are cross-tabulating sex and whether the student lives in Los Baños or not. The needle goes to the hole in the cards of males, and the cards that fall are those of females. Then the needle is placed in the hole for Los Baños in the cards of the females, and the cards that fall are those living outside Los Baños. The cards on the floor are then counted and entered into the appropriate cell of a 2x2 table. So from queue sorting, we graduated to coding sheets that were brought to the computer center for key punching and processing in a big frame computer whose memory is much lower than today's desktop or laptop. If you forgot a period in a Fortran-based program, it would take another week or two to get the results. We then went from key punch cards to working on terminals attached to a mainframe computer and batch printer, and finally to desktop computers of varying speeds and memories, and now to laptops and netbooks that produce statistical results using user-friendly programs in a split of a second. When I graduated from the university in the 1970s, I never imagined that the day would come when phones would fit inside my pockets, when the internet would link everyone to the World Wide Web, when the ubiquitous typewriter would be replaced by a tablet, and when I could read a graduation speech straight out of a much lighter mini e-library and iPad. We are grateful beneficiaries of these technological advances and the convenience that it affords us. But the convenience of sending text messages or tweeting our friends does come at a cost. As Peter Parker in Spider-Man would say, with great power comes great responsibility. The power of speed that technology gave us has compelled us also to work and live at a faster pace. It has become necessary to multitask in order to meet the multiple demands of work and beat our personal or study-related deadlines. In the flurry of information fed to us by the internet and media, the demands of work and study, and the stress of society's expectations, it is easy to get overwhelmed and lose sight of what is essential. 4 decades ago, life was slower, and in many ways quite inconvenient. Submitting a thesis required hours of careful typing, using the trusty Underwood typewriter, and getting acquainted with the smell and stain of liquid paper, although liquid paper came later in my college years. Meetings had to be carefully planned and schedules could not be changed on whim because access to phones was very limited. Even getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend and sustaining a relationship was inconvenient because it involved the long process of writing and waiting for love letters to intermediaries or the mail. Since SMS and Facebook were non-existent, you also had to master the art of conveying your sweet nothings to your loved one over the phone, with the rest of the family within earshot, and being alert to the danger of your neighbors snooping through the party line. But the slow pace and inconveniences of that era has taught our generation, and many of you are also in graduating today, the value of patience and perseverance. We learn to accept that everything has a proper place, time and space. We learn to value, even relish the long wait, constantly reminding ourselves of the old saying, kung may tiyaga, may nilaga. Ironically, the slow pace of life gave us more time for ourselves, more time for thoughts to marinate in our heads, more time to pause and ponder about the purpose and meaning of our life and our core values, more time to deepen our sense of the good and the beautiful beyond what appears in order to surface the substance beneath. The long wait and inconvenience of life made us accept that we cannot have everything under control all the time, but we have to give our best effort regardless and always hope for the best. Because we relied heavily on each other to get things done, we learned the value of a real community and developed awareness that our actions have real consequences for people around us. The long wait for our turn in the key puncher and typewriter days made us realize the value of time. It also brought us closer to God or to whoever we revere as we fervently prayed for a miracle that would make the queue go faster. For the young ones, the lesson is life is a series of waiting for doors of opportunities to open, painstakingly carving a space for yourself when life gives you a detour, waiting for the fruits of your hard work, and then waiting one more time to make sense of your long wait. As you grow older, you will learn to befriend the uncertainty of waiting. You will embrace the delay and the detours, because at the end of the day, they will shape who you are. For the graduates who are older, who have benefited from both a slower and a faster time, and from the many lessons in patience and perseverance, the challenge is different. It is how to keep from being complacent and stuck to old ways of doing. how to get out of comfort zones and adjust to the changing technology, the changing organization of work, the changing organization of life in the 21st century. It is how to be patient with young people who can handle technology intuitively without manuals. How to give space for their mistakes, their growth, and their capacity to surpass their achievements because they should. While I say this, however, there is something special about the UPOU graduates. Your openness, motivation, desire to learn continuously tells me that this challenge is a no-brainer for you. In more ways than one, you are not fixed in your ways. You are open, and therefore you will give space to the young as you give space to yourselves as you move on and learn continuously. 10 years ago, I was asked in an interview about my definition of success. I answered that I do not think of life in terms of success, for success is in itself an ambiguous term. Instead, I measure success based on learning, growth, and evolution. There is so much to learn about throughout life. From a deep wellspring of available knowledge and new discoveries. Those of you who will be retiring soon can actually take advantage of Coursera. I advertise Coursera not because I'm earning from it, but because we can make use of it, even if perhaps it will change the way we do things eventually. Beyond formal and informal courses, open yourselves to learning from failure. Do not be afraid to immerse yourselves in worthwhile ventures, even at the risk of failure, because failure is the best teacher. Unfortunately, we have not been trained to fail. We have been trained to perfect things before we actually immerse and implement. That's why we are not a people of implementers. Lee Kuan, former president of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, wrote in his book that once upon a time, he and President Marcos actually were asked to do a project, or at least a project proposal for ASEAN, and he watched President Marcos, and President Marcos did not seem interested after we made the grand plans to implement. And I say it is not a President Marcos problem. It is actually a Filipino problem. We are not people who actually implement. But we have to implement and we have to fail. Friends in economics say the reason why, of course, there are many stories and we're moving very well, at least in terms of our economic indicators. They say the reason why perhaps we were saved from a lot of the crisis, effects of the crisis, not only because of the remittances of our overseas Filipino workers, but because our ship never left shore. So those who left shore actually made mistakes. They left the pier, they made mistakes, they learned from it. Our ship never left shore, therefore we did not learn from any of the mistakes that we could have learned. So failure is the best teacher. It is harder for the siguristas to learn as much throughout life because the learnings will be limited because they're closed. As to growth, I measure success by a person's evolution in the course of decoding personal missions and the purpose of life at different points in time. Usually moments of personal crisis or transition points. And the purpose of life is always bigger than ourselves. Our purpose is to serve others. Whether it be our family, if we're expected to do so because of economic deprivation, whether it be the people in our workplace, whichever workplace we find ourselves, whether it be our community, the poorest of the poor, or something as abstract as our nation. But because you are UP students, you're also meant to fulfill the purpose of committed leadership in the service of our geographic and imagined community of Filipinos, in the service of the Filipino nation. We are faced with many challenges. Despite the growth of our economy, and I'm very happy that we are moving in this direction, we are lagging behind our neighbors in terms of moving our people out of poverty. In education, which is closest to us, despite a few bright lights like UP Open University being at the forefront of the ASEAN in terms of online education, we have slipped from being a center of graduate education in the 1960s to a perceived diploma mill of Asia. I'll tell you one story, and this is a story I have repeated time and again, and if you've heard this before, I apologize for that. But this is really a story of one case. I mean, it's just education. We're not talking about other sectors, but just for us to understand that we are no longer where we are, that we have to pull ourselves up because we have slipped behind. And my Thailand story is, basically, the Philippines was a center for the Thais. UP Los Baños in particular was a place where you had many Thais studying agriculture. When I started teaching in graduate school in 1983 or 1984, I had a number of Thai students. Many of them were actually working in the civil service of Thailand. In 1987, so that was around early 80s, the 60s to the 70s, 1987, we were part of the Philippine Social Science Council. The current chair of CHED was the chair then of the council. I was the vice chair, and the former chair before her. The three of us were obsessive-compulsive women, and we were asked to write a paper on the state of the Philippine social sciences to be presented in a conference in Bangkok. Because we were OC, we really said we were going to make an excellent paper, and we did make an excellent paper. We went to Bangkok, we were the women, so we were the only women, so we were asked to present first. We presented an excellent paper, and the Indonesians came after us and said, well, our paper is not as good, but we present it anyway. But the Thais floored us. They said, we're not presenting a paper because the level of development of the paper is inversely proportional to the level of development of the country. That was 1987, when Bangkok's traffic was worse than Manila's traffic, and when the Naya 1 airport was better than the Bangkok airport. Of course, it's now one of the worst airports. So I took that to heart. I stopped being proud of presenting excellent papers in conferences because Filipinos really present excellent papers. Part of it is the language. We abstract in the language of the dominant cultures, and therefore we always get that kind of recognition. Because at the end of the day, it is how our nation is that will eventually spell the difference. Jump to the 1990s. By then, we were in the UP Center for Integrative and Development Studies, and we had a relationship with the Chulalongkorn University of Thailand. And in the MOA signing there, at the end of the MOA signing, they usually have dinners, and the dinner would start with people talking about, I graduated from UP Los Baños, I graduated from UP Diliman, I graduated from AIM. But inevitably, after many years, several years, it's not even many years, several years, nobody talks about having graduated from the Philippines anymore. I told this story to a friend who was former Secretary of Foreign Affairs and former ambassador to Germany, Delia Albert. And I said these were my woes, that more or less were really slipping. And then she said it's not just at the level of education. It's also the case even in the foreign relationships, because it's how your country is that actually determines whether you get invited to strategic parties or even strategic. That was in the 1990s. Then we had relationships and we had scholars. We had a very good group of Southeast Asian scholars. We usually went from one conference to the other. And in these conferences, we would change notes. And finally, I was stranded in Bangkok during the floods, and I was in Chulalongkorn. And my friends there said, "Come, let's just talk about the agenda for Asia." And I felt, well, it was good, but I also felt there was not a condescension to us because we're friends, but a condescension to the Filipino academics. Maybe we were not, because we're not making it in the rankings, and we're not making it not because the quality necessarily is lower, but because the indicators are very difficult for many of our universities. Indicators like ratio of PhD students to undergraduate students. Most of our universities are undergraduate universities. In fact, I had to change my speech this afternoon, because I did not realize that UPOU is a graduate school. I mean, in other words, 70% of you are in graduate school and the rest are in undergraduate. But indicators like that, very difficult for us to meet. But basically, I felt, again, this was 2011, that problem. 2012, I already joined the Commission on Higher Education, and one of the first meetings that I attended was a meeting with the Thailand Ministry, equivalent of CHED in Thailand. And in that meeting, they wanted to be the hub for journals that we will lead. Iba tayo yung nag-lead, tayo yung nagko-convene, and we could no longer do it. But that's not even the end of my story. I used to say that if you don't shift to a learner-centered competency-based learning, which of course at OpenU you had already shifted much earlier, that we might in our own country. But then I changed my tone because I was part of the strategic planning of the Philippine Science High School system. They are among the best teachers, but they get the lowest pay. They get the lowest pay because they lack the 2 years. And the lack of 2 years to bureaucrats become important, especially if you're competitors. And then I was told, and I was telling the same story, the best marine scientists, the young ones, they were studying, I'm not sure if it's Europe or somewhere. And eventually they were among the best in their batch, but they were given a diploma. And just a few days ago, I got a text from another friend who was upset because apparently Erasmus will not recognize applications for MAs from the Philippines because we lack 2 years. Of course, now lack of 2 years, eventually it's lack of competence. But the story I am sharing, and even a few weeks ago, we were in Jakarta for the ASEAN, because there will be ASEAN reference qualification framework with ASEAN. There is now all discussions on recognition of degrees and qualifications, and this is the ASEAN, New Zealand, and Australia free trade area, and basically it's discussing the next phase, which countries are going to be host countries to help ASEAN countries put systems in place and help them with their qualifications framework. Unfortunately, we were not singled out as a host country. The host countries that were identified, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. I have another story, but I will make your graduation long and would like to be with your family. The other story is we're in a middle-income country trap. You read that in the papers. We're really caught. We cannot move up the value chain. Our manufacturing is not moving, but that's not the story I will tell you now because of lack of time. As UP graduates, the responsibility for finding out-of-the-box solutions to these and many other problems falls squarely on your shoulders. But we have to come together to find these solutions. It is said that one-on-one, we excel. Unfortunately, and I do believe one-on-one, we can beat many of those who think that we are already down. Unfortunately, as groups and as a country, we are unable to put our act together. My challenge to you, our dear UP graduates, who are at the forefront of technology and lifelong learning, is to please help to understand the many constraints that keep us from working together, that make us pull each other down rather than move up, so that we can achieve common goals. Our goal now is to leapfrog on practically all fronts, even on all indicators of technological innovations, including the perception of the quality of our scientific output. This is coming from the Global Competitiveness Index, the technological innovation part. We are trailing very far behind Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, even Vietnam. We're trailing far behind them. I looked at the indicators of research and the indicators of other outputs, from another source. We are in the second tier. The first tier would be, of course, Singapore is far, and then Malaysia and Thailand. The second tier is Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, in that order. And the slope of the Philippines is almost flat. The Philippine Institute of Development Studies recently issued a table where you have on the rows the number of basically where we are in terms of our education, and on the columns where we are in terms of our GNP. And we are losing momentum in education and lagging behind in terms of GNP. And all the ASEAN neighbors with whom we will be one community by 2015 or 2016 are in the catching up, both in education and in education and in per capita GNP, which actually means leapfrogging on all fronts. So that is our challenge. Your challenge is how to lead, because you are UP graduates, towards this end, wherever you are and whatever you do. But you cannot face this challenge without a strong core. without faith and resolve to abide by a moral compass, whether you believe in a God or not, without being centered, engaged but detached, and without being a bit more giving and less anxious in the face of difficulties. On this occasion, I wish you abundant grace, abundant blessings to carry out your mission as UP graduates, so you will be able to help this country pull itself by bootstraps. But even as I ask you to please let us all serve this nation, I wish you all the grace to grow and evolve as persons in the process, in the spirit of lifelong learning and the spirit of lifelong evolution. Mabuhay kayo lahat.
Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Associate in Arts para sa tag-araw taong akademiko 2011 hanggang 2012. Mariano M. Licauco Jr. Biel G. Remoquilio. Dessa Don L. Tangi. Para sa unang trimestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Lara Unica T. Zapata. Para sa unang semestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Carla Evans D. Dakiwa. Dayan S. Imato. Para sa ikalawang trimestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Aloysius Carlo C. Calalo. Diane Louise W. Garcia. Sinclair Go. Eleanor O. Hata. Carmina S. Sarmiento. Lynn H. Valencia. Para sa ikalawang semestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Wency L. Absulio. Anna Ruth Grace V. de la Sierra. Para sa ikatlong trimestre taong akademiko 2012-13, Alan Jeffrey B. Abrenica. Jesusa Alan Z. Adena. C. Antonio. Nathan G. Borbol. Byron Amadeus G. Kayab. Joanna L. Fernandez. Lara Patricia D. Malikden. China Ayn Robin E. Rodriguez. Adrian Diane Isabel R. Saldua. Francesca Grace S. Yaneza. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Diploma in Language and Literacy Education. Para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Ana Carmela A. Hesmundo. Maria Sheila T. Suzuike. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Maria Lourdes M. Arnado. Mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Master of Arts in Education, Language and Literacy Education. Para sa tag-araw, taong akademiko 2011 hanggang 2012. Reynald M. Cacho. Violeta C. Nunez. Para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Maria Krista Ruth R. Poha. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Maria Fe Esperanza Caridad T. Bruni, Chancellor's List. Kian Chong Ong. Jennifer F. Vivas. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Diploma in Mathematics Teaching. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Alfred C. Avancenia. Annalie R. Fuerte. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Diploma in Social Studies Education. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Hener L. De Pedro. Nineveh E. Emlano, Mark Anthony C. Española, Sandro J. Rebadio, ang magtatapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Graduate Certificate in Distance Education para sa Tagaraw taong akademiko 2011 hanggang 2012, J. C. Babera. Ang magtatapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Master of Distance Education para sa ikatlong semestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Alexander O. Tuazon, Chancellor's List. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Information and Communication Studies na may titulong Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies. Para sa ikalawang trimestre, taong akademiko, 2012 hanggang 2013, Angela Christine B. Matusalem. Para sa ikatlong trimestre, taong akademiko, 2012 hanggang 2013, Elaine Kim T. Abenier. Ricky I. Suicano. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Information and Communication Studies na may titulong Diploma in Computer Science. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko, 2012 hanggang 2013, George M. Alvarado. Shelo Fe C. Blasing. Marco T. Collado. Victorio M. De la Peña Jr. Leah Jean A. Diopenes Dean's List. Ruben A. Idoy Jr., Dean's List. Frank Alexis M. Maicom. Mercy C. Salas. Arturo A. Sanchez. John Ro L. Tabuada. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Information and Communication Studies na may titulong Master of Development Communication. Para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Abigail C. Boluso. Florante A. Cruz, Chancellor's List. Michelle S. Cruz. Ivy S. Cueto. Maria Nenita D.C. Dalupan. Jomar A. de Guzman. Noel Grace Marie M. Ibarra. Catherine B. Jimenez. Ana Carla C. Leido. Benedict Peter W. Lim, Dean's List. But Camela Rose S. Manuel. Remelin G. Mondes. Crisel Abigail S. Noble. Diabel Joy M. Paspugin. Annalyn F. Robenicia, Dean's List. Robert G. Silieza. Jacqueline B. Santo Domingo. Carla Cristina T. Timpug. Sherwin E. Verdun. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko, 2012 hanggang 2013. Lutheran R. Banta. S. Bernardo. Jacknor John A. Borja. Jethro Misael M. Cañas. Melissa C. Delara. Adona T. De La Rosa. Lorilyn Therese War. Irene Abigail S. Guerrero Felix. Emma Hernandez Artes. Charmaine B. Jimeno. Maida F. Cabinque, Maria Arminda A. Linaha, Florence Joy L. Maluyo, Rayleigh G. Melendres, Maria Cecilia L. Rodriguez, Joyce Ann B. Umali, Numeriano M. Yuzon, Angelo S. Zapatos, Information and Communication Studies. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of na may titulong Master of Information Systems. Para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Orville E. Avila, Imelda B. Breganza, Kim L. Paburada, Claire P. Fernandez, Jose F. Ibarrientos III, Alxan Rex S. Irineo, Vladimir M. Piando. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Maria Cecilia G. Adifuin, Arlene B. Brillantes, Rebel L. Caluna, Christopher B. Dayagdag, Edward E. Maranan, Genesis Dave A. Kidasol, Glenn Alfred S. Thomas, Rowena P. Thomas, Gilmar D. Tiro,
ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Management and Development Studies na may titulong Diploma in Research and Development Management para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Alvin Christian C. Calalo, Ruth Ann C. Feliciano, Jessica Paula C. Malilian, Jesus S. Nasis, Marisa R. Tayoto, Ervin C. Tutor, para sa ikalawang semestre, 13, Marleoni M. Bauyo. Semestre, Angeli B. Belen. Philip Jos, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2000, Joseph M. Cos. Alain Jason A. Generali, Dean's List. Maria Stella S. Osorio. Richelle G. Real. Maria Cristina C. Sabalya. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Management and Development Studies na may titulo diploma para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Bayani Thaddeus U. Barcenas. Eric D. Buduan. Evelyn A. Corrado. Senda Z. Viona. Ezekias O. Foncardas Jr. Jessica Jordan L. Hebron. Analisa E. Morales. Maria Gracia G. Soriano. Joel M. Talawi. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Andrea Milin C. Madrid. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Management and Development Studies na may titulong Master of Environment and Natural Resources Management. Para sa unang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Amalia R. Maling. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012, Sheila May P. Milan. Mario U. Tercero. Ang mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Management and Development Studies na may titulong Master of Public Health. Para sa tag-araw, taong akademiko 2011 hanggang 2012. Cheryl S. Balani. Grace Fe R. Bukiran. Marie Ann C. Corsino. Rodora A. Del Rosario Ocampo. Editha D. Divino. Naisi Gail C. Fabros. Maria Chinky B. Gingap. Maria Ruela L. Lamak. Leilani B. Mercado Asis. Hanilet J. Nicolas. Jose Mario Amado M. Pingul. Nida Pauline R. C. Santos. Ariel D. Balones. Mga magsisipagtapos mula sa Faculty of Management and Development Studies na may titulong Master of Public Management para sa tag-araw taong akademiko 2011 hanggang 2012. Abigail Nazareth D. Aquino. Alisa L. Belarmino. Maria Angelica B. Mersigan. Michelle Arferia Selvia C. Palma. Misaeli M. Tejano. Marisa R. Winkler. Para sa unang semestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Karina F. Macalos. Para sa ikalawang semestre taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013, Gary C. Alejano. Michael P. Basister. Donna Chris B. Lacanlali. Michelle M. Lalunio. Rodolfo H. Rostilla.
ang magtatapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Doctor of Philosophy in Education, Major in Chemistry Education. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Georgina A. Diopenes. Ang pamagat ng disertasyon ay Effects of Indigenous Small-Scale Chemistry Experiments on Concept Understanding Achievement, Level of Participation, and Attitude of Students. Ang research advisor ay si Dr. Amelia E. Punzalan. Ang magtatapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Doctor of Philosophy in Education, Major in Biology Education. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Catherine A. Lim. Ang pamagat ng kanyang disertasyon ay Students' Academic Performance and Conceptual Knowledge in Microbiology and Parasitology, taught with a problem-based learning approach. Ang kanyang research advisor ay si Dr. Amelia C. Fajardo. Ang magtatapos mula sa Faculty of Education na may titulong Doctor of Philosophy in Education, Major in Mathematics Education. Para sa ikalawang semestre, taong akademiko 2012 hanggang 2013. Joel R. Noche, Chancellor's List. Ang pamagat ng kanyang disertasyon ay Conceptual and Procedural Knowledge in Proportional Reasoning of Undergraduate Students. Ang kanyang research advisor ay si Dr. Catherine P. Vistro Yu.
Dr. Cynthia Rose Bautista, Commissioner of the Commission on Higher Education. Regent Ponciano Rivera Jr., President of the UP Alumni Association. Vice President Lisa Grace Versales, and Vice President Prospero Rivera III. Dear faculty and officers of the different universities of the UPOU, my dear co-graduates, families and friends. Isang maganda at mapayapang gabi po sa inyong lahat. My dear co-graduates, families and friends, and faculty, I come before you humbled by the opportunity and awed by the responsibility to speak for a field of graduates, half of whom are younger than my children. Perhaps it is a demonstration that in lifelong learning, age does not matter. And this is made possible by UPOU. By now, After attending a number of graduation ceremonies, we already know that a commencement exercise, such as one we have tonight, contrary to what the name implies, is not an ending to one, nor a beginning for another. It is rather a marker that a person has reached a milestone in his or her life's journey and is now ready for greater challenges. Our presence here tonight as graduates is an affirmation by the University of the Philippines Open University that indeed we have reached a milestone and that we are deemed ready for what lies ahead. That by itself calls for a celebration and a congratulation. My dear co-graduates, please let us clap our hands and applaud each other on this momentous day. And as we do, clap even louder to give praise and thanks to our Lord who gives and provides for everything, for UPOU and our dear mentors, and especially for our families and dear ones who have supported us throughout the years. Yes, you can wave to them and say thank you. There is a new and informal tradition in UP graduation rites that serves to remind us of something that we hopefully have not forgotten. A compass that tells us true north. As we sing in these exercises, the UP hymn, the UP Naming Mahal, we punch our fist in the air. This practice can bewilder the uninformed, yet it cannot be denied. But for some of us, it stirs deep and sometimes dormant emotions. In my youth, and my last graduation was 34 years ago, it was an act of defiance against the dictatorship and subservience. Now, it serves as a reminder of what we were, what we have become, and what we should be doing. Rather than as an act of fighting against, it should now remind us to fight for. That we, who have been privileged to receive an education from UP and UPOU, and the opportunity to better ourselves, must not lose sight of the true and ultimate real purpose, to fight and work for the improvement of the underserved and our communities. Back then, we punched our fist in the air to commit ourselves to fight against oppression and to support change. Yes, even then a revolution, throwing caution into the wind. But a different revolution we found out is needed if we are to uplift ourselves, our lives, and our country. And that is the revolution from within. We have been touched by the realization that there is no status quo. The world around us changes, whether insidiously or in bursts. Dramatic changes have and are occurring in many areas of human endeavor, politically, economically, socially, and even in the field of communication, management, health, and education. The world has become smaller, and as our honorable guest speaker said, there's a lot of competition even between countries. And yet, there is a danger that the benefits from these changes will not reach all our communities. If we will realize our destiny as individuals and as a people, we cannot be bystanders to these changes, but willing and informed participants, if not leaders. There are numerous touch points in our lives accelerated by information and communications technology and the vast networks it has spawned. It could be a big event, like the recent Boston Marathon bombing, or a national catastrophe like Onloy, or the destruction of our coral by foreign and even local intruders, or the student who brought a diploma to the graves of his parents, which went viral on YouTube, or a simpler exchange of views over coffee leaves us thankful that again we get to learn something new every day. These touch points tug at our hearts and our minds. Some touch points in our lives have influenced what we are today and what we will become tomorrow. Tonight, today, the major touch point is graduating from UPOU. We have sought UPOU knowing that in our individual circumstances, UP perhaps we have our own mission, our own goals, but we have all come to UPOU to make our visions, our goals for ourselves, for our families, for our institutions, and even for our communities. We believe sincerely that education prepares mind and body with knowledge and skills that will enable us to lead a more fruitful life, to be productive of our communities, to be leaders in this ever-changing and challenging world. As a learning institution, UPOU has provided us an environment to learn not only new knowledge and skills, but also to learn about ourselves, our peers, and our mentors. Hours devoted to individual work, group discussions, and interactions instilled in us disciplined and critical thinking, gave birth to socially sensitive ideas and relevant skills. UPOU ensured a milieu that encourages individual excellence, the value of multiple perspectives, social awareness, and humility of thought. The variety of backgrounds of each one of us and the seeming differences in purpose presented a rich field for personal and social growth. UPOU's learning environment provided us with great opportunities to interact, feeding touch points that not only enrich our knowledge and skills, but also enrich our hearts and spirit. The spirit to drive passion, the heart to provide courage. UPOU provided us the touch points for the mind, the body, the heart, and the spirit. During my distance education courses, I had the privilege of learning from a stellar lineup of faculty who, in the words of Gibran the poet, did not bid me enter to her wisdom, but rather led me to the threshold of my own mind. I will mention my teachers, and I beg to apologize a little bit to the other teachers. You can, Professor Primo Garcia, Professor Adriano, Professor Esteves, and even Chancellor Alfonso. Embodiment of scholarship and social consciousness. They saw the potential in each of us and showered us with their faith and confidence, and occasionally their patience. I was also blessed to have studied with individuals who have passion and vision, persons who individually and collectively to make a difference. While we learned in our courses the pedagogical foundations of teaching and learning, the different tools like designs, the utility of multimedia, evaluation, research, it was clear throughout that this was not to be learning for learning's sake. but all came to learn for a purpose. I remember Darlina Formoso and Ruth Arsenue, focusing on special kids with special educational needs. Jay Babera, who is now graduating, and Tony Palenzuela on seafarers. Carmela Vertido on values formation for school children. Joe Guerrero Fritz on the local administration of vegan. Felici Flores from Atlanta, Georgia on physics in high school. Domingo Casten on culinary training. Berlin Olaisan on learning languages. Joel Cruz on music. Such was my learning environment provided by UPOU, full of creativity and sense of mission, that not one can remain untouched. Touch points tend to multiply in logarithmic fashion to propagate itself. As UPOU has touched each and every one of us, so shall we become touch points ourselves as we practice the profession we have sought to enrich ourselves and as we apply what we have learned to make our personal dreams and visions a reality. And when we proceed from this graduation to practice our profession and apply what we have learned, we must do it with seriousness and with a sense of responsibility. For we are ambassadors of our profession, for we are ambassadors of the University of the Philippines, Open University. For we, even without conscious effort, will touch minds and lives with our words and our actions. As we nurture our mind and skills that UP has helped develop, we thrill at the possibility of making a difference. Instilled with a refreshed passion of spirit and a heart with double courage to make a difference, not only with ourselves, but for our families and the communities we serve and live in. As we go and meet the challenges that lie ahead, may we all be stars that shine bright. For as we all know, it is the stars that illuminate the darkness of night. God bless and Godspeed.
Taas natin ang ating kanang kamay. Tapat akong sumusumpa bilang isang nakapagtapos sa Universidad ng Pilipinas sa sisikapin kong maging karapat-dapat sa karangalan at pamantayan ng kahusayan ng aking universidad na isa sa loob ang mga bagay na mag-aangat sa aking kaisipan at pagkatao at mamamalaging nasa panig ng batas, kalayaan at katarungan. Alang-alang sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sangkatauhan. Congratulations sa inyo.
Manatili pong nakataas ang kanang kamay at makapangyarihan sa akin. Taos puso akong nanunumpa na isa sa katuparan ko ng buong husay at katapatan at walang pag-iimbot ang mga tungkuling nakaatang sa akin bilang kasapi ng samahan ng mga nagtapos sa Universidad ng Pilipinas. Pagtatanggol ko at ipaglalaban ang kapakanan ng universidad na aking pinagtapusan, ang Universidad ng Pilipinas, at ipinangangako kong magiging matapat na nagtapos sa universidad na ito. Sa lahat ng pagkakataon, kaya tulungan nawa ako ng Diyos. Congratulations and welcome to the UP Alumni.